Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, and this is another NFL season preview edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. And in this video, we're going to look at the AFC East for the upcoming NFL season. Ian Cameron with you. Of course, Philip Nelson joins us for many of our division previews, but we got another former guest of ours, and you remember he's joined us a couple of years in a row for a division preview at this time of year, and he's back with us this time to help us with the AFC East. Liam Howe on the West Coast, beautiful British Columbia, back with us here on the Football Frenzy, former CIS football player years ago with the Saskatchewan Huskies as well. Liam, it is good to see you. It's been a while. How are you doing? Things good?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back. 3 years in a row. It's nice not to do the NFC West for once, so it's nice to have a little change up here.
I know. That's another thing. I've given you nothing but the NFC West in the past as far as a division to talk about. So, yeah, we're going to diversify the portfolio a little bit. You're in finance. You know what that's all about. So there you go. That's exactly what we're doing. All right, let's get into the AFC East. And I didn't pick the Buffalo Bills to start with because they've owned this division for the last few years. But we always go, as you know, in alphabetical order. So that's why we're starting with the Buffalo Bills. And obviously this is a Buffalo Bills team that has become what the New England Patriots were in the AFC East in the Tom Brady era, where they just dominated this division and won it every year. You didn't even have to really question it, that the Buffalo Bills were going to end up being, win the division, no question. But this year, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for Buffalo. The first thing that stands out is because, look, with the Bills, people know how they're expected to win this division. They're expected to contend for a Super Bowl. The last few years, they've been upended by Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. That's been the team that the Buffalo Bills have, that's been their kryptonite essentially the last few years. There's no question about that. But I think when you look at this year, they're minus 280, by the way, at FanDuel to win the AFC East. So that tells you all you need to know about just what kind of a favorite they are once again to win this division. And yes, they've been a picture of consistency. There is no question about that. But when you look at the Bills this year from a scheduling standpoint, they're also getting a first-place schedule. They do have some tough matchups. Outside of their division games, they're going to have to play Kansas City, Baltimore in Week 1. What a hell of a start that is to the season. Doesn't get much better, Liam. Week 1, Sunday Night Football, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, AFC divisional playoff rematch Sunday night to get the Week 1 schedule going. Steelers, Eagles, Texans. It'll be interesting to see how they fare. They do get to play the NFC South, though, as far as the division they play, one of the divisions they play, and that is one of the weakest divisions in the NFL this season. When you look at this team as far as personnel is concerned, obviously last year all the talk was Gabe Davis gone, Steph Diggs gone. Big problems maybe for Josh Allen in the passing game. How are they going to replenish that? But what happened was they kind of changed their philosophy a little bit, and you got to credit Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, a little bit for this. A little too pass heavy 2 years ago and prior to that, Liam, this offense. Just they put it a little too much on Josh Allen's plate. Last year, we saw them really establish the run a lot more and become a lot more balanced offense. We got Josh Allen, and he's got a great arm, and we have some pretty good receivers, but we have a very good running back, and they have a stable of backs. They have Ray Davis, and of course they've got now James Cook. Last year he was excellent, and it's got him the big contract. And yes, there was him holding out in training camp up till just a couple days ago, when finally the Bills and James Cook agreed to a 4-year, $48 million extension. So James Cook back in the fold once again for this Bills offense, and I think that was big where. Not only did they run the football a little bit more, Josh Allen took care of the football as well last year, MVP of the regular season, and rightfully so. He played like he was Superman with the cape on at times. He was just leading that team, would not be denied. He accounted for 40 touchdowns, 28 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. And that was an issue too, Liam, for Josh 2 years ago. Just a few too many times he'd force that football, and there'd be issues with his ball security, but really did a much better job protecting the football last year. Now, they still have to develop some receivers. Can Keon Coleman take another step? That's going to be questions. Khalil Shakir's been banged up here in training camp, although it looks like the Bills have avoided the worst with Khalil Shakir, who is now likely going into the season as their number one receiver. He should be good to go for Sunday night, week 1 against Baltimore, which is a relief, I know, to all Bills fans. No question about that. But it'll be interesting to see how they fare. They signed Joshua Palmer from the LA Chargers, to help this receiving core out a little bit. Now, he's another guy that's had some injury problems in the past. I think he's a good receiver, but the problem is, durability, at times for Josh Palmer. So be interesting to see if they're able to keep him healthy, no question. And like I said, you got Coleman. Hopefully he takes another step. Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, and others. You got 2 good tight ends in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox as well. So, and of course, James Cook back in the fold. So the offense should be good. There's no question. Cook had almost 1,100 or over 1,000 yards last year, 16 rushing touchdowns as well. The offensive line is solid. The tackles are good. Dawkins and Spencer Brown, no question. The interior blocking, had some issues at times, but still pretty solid overall. On the defensive side of the football, it'll be interesting to see how they fare. That's the issue at times last year is with the Bills was on the defensive side of the football. But I think when you look all things considered, the D-line, they've made some nice additions. How Joey Bosa works out is going to be interesting. This guy has just been a porcelain doll the last few years, unable to stay healthy. But we know he's a good player. But again, lots of stints on the injury report. Is he going to be able to keep that going here? That's going to be the big question. AJ Epinesa, though, can help them out. Greg Rousseau took a big step forward last year as far as getting a pass rush. Landon Jackson, 3rd round draft pick this year in the NFL draft to help give them some depth at the edge rush position as well. The defensive tackles are solid. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones. So I think they'll be fine there. They were solid for the Bills last year. TJ Sanders was drafted to help get them a little bit more thrust on that defensive front. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares for this Bills team. Drafting him in the 2nd round. 4th round, Deion Walker as well should help against the run. So the defense, I think, should be, and the Bills have had issues there in the past, but should be a little bit better. They used 3 draft picks for D linemen. They ended up, of course, last year, the secondary is where they had problems. Benford got hurt. That was a problem. They got, obviously, Kaiir Elam was traded away. He kind of struggled, never really got to the level they thought. Teron Johnson's very good, no doubt. The cornerback spots, still pretty solid. That'll be interesting. Taylor Rapp coming off a bit of a down year. DeMar Hamlin's a great story. Liam, coming back from nearly dying on the football field with the cardiac issue a few years ago, but, still got room for improvement. Still, am I trusting him as a bona fide starting cornerback? I'm not so sure about that. They signed Shaq Thompson to try to bolster the linebacking core, especially with Matt Milano. And Matt Milano is a great player, no question. But he's had a lot of injuries. He missed the first 3 months of last year, struggled when he got back. It'll be interesting to see if he can get back to that level. He can be a tear. And Terrell Bernard also there in that linebacking core. We'll see if he can. He kind of struggled at times last year. We'll see if he can bounce back as far as that's concerned. Tyler Bass, their kicker, once again. Look, it's still the best team, the most talented team, and by far the best quarterback in the AFC East division. So I do see them winning the division. The win total, it'll be interesting because the schedule does, have some tricky games on it. And you're not getting a bargain, certainly, with the Buffalo Bills to go over their win total because their win total is currently in that 11.5, 12.5 range, depending on which book you're looking at. So I'm definitely not betting an over at a number like that. But I could still see them getting to that 12 range as far as wins are concerned for the Buffalo Bills. We'll see. And another thing that concerns me too, Liam, the Buffalo Bills are not being judged on anything that they do between September and December. This is about January now. This is about winning in the playoffs, and this is about finally getting over the hump and getting to the Super Bowl. So there could be moments where if the injuries mount, it's like, let's just tread water. Let's just try to hold the fort, get in the playoffs, and then we'll go from there. So that's another element that has me shying away, Liam, from looking hard at a Buffalo over an 11.5 or 12.5 season win total. What are your thoughts here on the Buffalo Bills?
Sorry about the audio, by the way. A concert just kicked off outside my office here, so hopefully it doesn't cause too many issues here. Let me know if it does.
No, it sounds okay. I barely hear it at all, honestly.
Awesome, yeah. Awesome. Well, they sound better than me, so at the end of the day, it's not too bad. You know what? I I actually agree with some of the draft books here for once. I think the Buffalo Bills are an easy 12.5 win team. I would smash the over on that. I think they're going to come away with at least 13, especially with the new 17-week season. I'm not so high on them because they're the Bills. I'm more so high on them because the division looks so subpar this year. I don't really have faith in the Jets for obvious reasons, the Pats, or even the Dolphins here, just because of Tua's injury history. But the Bills here are set up for success. I think they got the really strong team, but the big worry that I have that comes to mind is injury troubles. They, more than any other team, are not deep. If Bosa goes down, like you said, Milano.
And that's a product of years of contending, and it whittles away your depth in the process. Yes. Yeah.
Totally. The one thing they did acknowledge is they know their weaknesses, and they acknowledge that in the draft by targeting that D line, getting that Bosa signing is huge. But again, you said it yourself. He's been on the IR a lot more than you'd like, especially for a star player in the past number of years. So we'll see what happens there. I do like the receiving group. I think their running game is going to have a strong year. And the biggest reason for my faith in them is I'm a big Brady fan. I think that he's been, making the right calls and designing the right offense for the skill set of the players that he has ever since before his days at LSU. The Burrow year at LSU was not an anomaly. It was directly Brady, right? So him translating that to the NFL, bringing that mindset and that new kind of scheme, that modern scheme of calling offensive plays is huge. And obviously, I think Josh Allen's a top 5 quarterback in the league. That combo is going to be deadly this year. It's just, like you said, not asking him to do too much. Keep it simple. Don't use your legs too much. Stay in the pocket. If you have to sneak out, do it. But you got the guys around you on the offensive side of the ball to keep moving it downfield, keep putting points on the board. Don't ask for too much. Take the shot when it's there. Check it down. Just trust in the process and trust the players you got. You don't have to have some guy that goes out there and tries to throw for 500 yards a game. You got a decent defense. You got the offensive tools. Just keep playing that checkers game and just keep moving the ball downfield, and they're going to come out a lot on top here.
All right, good stuff. And by the way, Buffalo, I did bet them to win the AFC and the Super Bowl. Not the division, obviously. I'm not laying minus 280, but I did bet them plus 375 AFC, plus 700 for the Super Bowl. Put that in pocket. Because they're a team, too, that I don't think they'd love to obviously have the AFC go through Buffalo, but they've already lost to Kansas City with the AFC going through Buffalo. So I think it's just, like I said, just get in, home or away, and hope you've learned from some of the lessons and, just falling just short of years past. So I still think Buffalo's got it in them to win the AFC, finally get over that hump and win the Super Bowl. But obviously, that's all I'm taking. I'm not interested in laying the big number to win the division.
Yeah, I'm a little shy on them making the Super Bowl. I think there's just too much talent across the league. And just with this division, I don't know if that matchup, is going to put them in a position where they've been playing top-tier talent all year, and they're going to be used to, those hard, gritty games. I think the reality of this division is they're going to blow out the Jets. They're going to blow out the Patriots a few times. If the Dolphins aren't healthy, they're going to do the same thing. So they're going to have some runaway games. They're going to have a high-scoring offense. It's going to put them ahead in a lot of games. I don't think they're going to be challenged to the point, which is what I think that's happening to them in the playoffs. Even when it does come through Buffalo and you get that, minus 30 degrees Celsius snow rolling through and you go, hey, we're playing a team that's not used to this. They haven't come out on top. And that's why I'm not as high on them in the playoffs. I think that they don't have the grit or the struggle or just, whatever's going on in that locker room. I don't know if they're there yet. I think, it takes a few years for a quarterback to be the leader. Obviously, Josh Allen's that leader, but I think that he's just a couple years away from being that guy that we refer to and putting that conversation with Mahomes truly. Because obviously right now, you have the Mahomes, you have the Jackson, you got the Burrow, you got the Herbert, but there's a separation between Mahomes and those guys. And the separation is obviously those Super Bowl wins and that history of winning, right? So until he can prove that in the playoffs, whether it be at home or away, Josh Allen's going to constantly be referred to as that regular season gamer, right?
Yeah, and he's won playoff games too. He's beaten Lamar and Baltimore. He's beaten a handful of teams multiple times, but it's Kansas City.
There's that one that matters.
Kansas City,
the one game that matters.
Yeah, and Patrick Mahomes, and unfortunately, it's been that way for a lot of the teams in the AFC in the years over the last few years, no doubt. All right, next up, the Miami Dolphins, a Miami Dolphins team that, at least for me, I have a lot of question marks about. 8-9 last season. Were the Miami Dolphins. Now I'm seeing all these positives from Mike McDaniel's team here in training camp about Tua. Oh, he's looking great. He's looking sharp. He's just the ball is coming out of his arm with just precision and accuracy, and he's dropping dimes and all this training camp gibberish and nonsense that I hear year in and year out from these reports, these training camp reports. And I always say take those with a bit of caution, in my opinion, with that. And at the end of the day, this is a Tua Tagovailoa that we were wondering with another multiple concussion injuries in the past. We've seen him concussed multiple times now, stretchered off the field. And we've talked about maybe his career being over when he got knocked out last year, week 2 against Buffalo, that was it for Tua. And, so let's see with the live bullets and pass rushes and blitz. Remember, you're not blitzing in preseason. You're not blitzing in training camp. So when the blitz is when the pass rush is ignited, is Tua Tagovailoa going to be able to survive that? And is he going to be? He will be. He's ready to start the season, but one more hit to the head, and no one wants to see it. Obviously, it's already a situation where he's had too many of these. But one more, and you really worry, could it end his career at this point in time? There's no question. And the issue I have with the Tua and Miami offense, Liam, is the O-line is hideous on paper entering this season for the Miami Dolphins. Like, it is a really bad offensive line situation for this Dolphins team. Tyron Armstead suddenly, he was injured all the time anyway, but he was a good left tackle for years, going back to the Saints days. And he's all of a sudden retired, and he's done. They had all kinds of departures too, last year as well, when they, Robert Hunt and Connor Williams departed. And last year, the interior, especially of that O-line, was about as bad as it gets for this Miami Dolphins team. They had struggled at times to run the football. Now the front office is trying to rectify that, bringing in James Daniels. They used a second-round pick on Jonah Savaiinaea to kind of help that O-line. It'll be interesting to see what they get out of him. But, it'll be, like I said, Daniels should help a little bit. But again, coming off an injury-riddled season, are you going to get him on the field for 17 games this year? There's no sure sign of that by any stretch of the imagination. The tackles are a big-time issue. Like I said, with Armstead's retirement, Patrick Paul, who was a second-round pick in last year's draft, is expected to take that spot. Who the hell knows how he's going to fare? And when he did take it over last year, he didn't play well, in that position. That's the blind spot, and that's the vulnerable spot where we're worried like hell that one more time where a left tackle whiffs and someone gets in on Tua to the head area, that's it. It could be it for his season, could be it for his career. So the O-line for a guy that's certainly had his share of head injuries in the past, and the O-line being such a shaky unit, such a shaky position group going into this season, Liam, it is the biggest concern that I have for Miami, that poor offensive line play from last year. And with that O-line being bad last year, how did it hurt them? Well, you have great receivers. That's the one thing Miami we thought had last year, but you can't get the ball to those great receivers on time and when you want, when the O-line's under duress, and you're kind of wasting Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They both had down seasons statistically last year, but you can't really blame them. It's not like they lost their skills and ability and their talent, Liam, from one year to the next. This is just the O-line wasn't good enough, and it didn't allow Tua or any of the quarterbacks to get the ball into the hands of those two guys often enough. So that is another reason why we've got all kinds of concerns there. Like I said, the receiving core is fine. When you've got Hill and Waddle, they bring in Westbrook Akine, who showed you a little something at Tennessee. Now, I don't know what we're going to get out of it. This is shocking to me that Darren Waller, has come out of retirement, and all of a sudden it's looking like he might be the starting. I don't know if I love that. Guy's been out of football for years, and how effective is he going to be now at this stage of his career? We'll have to wait and see. I think he's passed. I think he's shot, but credit to him. He's going to give it a try anyway. I like Devon Achane, good running back. But again, how good is this O-line going to be? Are they going to be able to open up holes? They couldn't open up running lanes last year or holes for the ground game at all last year, this Miami offensive line. An O-line that I think's got as many questions this year. So big-time concerns on offense. And again, a head injury-prone quarterback in Tua. Can they protect him adequately enough? This subpar O-line, that's a big worry and question that I have. No doubt. The defensive line, if you flip it to the other side of the football, it's funny. There's concerns there too, in terms of depth. and in terms of concerns. Right now, for the Miami Dolphins, the trenches on both sides of the football are a big-time freaking concern. There's one player I like on their D-line. It's Zach Sealer. That's it. I think everyone else, there's question marks galore and concerns about whether they're going to get the job done for this Miami team on the defensive line. That is where I'm a little bit worried going in. Now, the good news is they selected Kenneth Grant, 13th pick this year in the draft, nose tackle. They desperately need to strengthen the interior of that D-line. Is he ready to perform right away? This is a rookie after all. But nevertheless, they addressed a big-time need, Liam. You can't criticize them for that. No doubt. So we'll see how quickly he can come around for them. There's no and if he can, that's going to really help. And then, of course, what happened in the offseason, the big trade, and who knows what we're going to get from the secondary for the Dolphins. And it's a secondary I didn't love last year, and I don't know if I like them anymore this year. They trade Jalen Ramsey to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know they bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick, but he's coming off a couple of down years. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick for Pittsburgh was better 2 years ago than he was last year, and it's starting to look like, look, Pittsburgh's not stupid, Liam. That's another thing that the alarm bells go off, right? This is an organization that usually knows what they're doing. They haven't had a losing season in forever under Mike Tomlin. Why would they trade Minkah Fitzpatrick if they didn't think that this man's maybe on the decline a little bit? And I think they see that. What do you think? I'll throw it to you.
If I was anyone training with Pittsburgh Steelers, I would not do it right now because they have a track record of history there that's successful. And there's a reason that they make the playoffs every year. And there's a reason that they have organizational success. And it's usually not because of the players they have in that locker room that are superstars, right? Obviously, you got TJ Watt over there. That's one of the best defensive players, arguably, of all time. But surrounded by guys that are, hit and miss or replacements from other teams or guys that were glorified substitutes. And it honestly is Tomlin, his structure, his scheme, and just the locker room chemistry. Like, they don't take guys that aren't going to be bought in. And as we've seen that with, Le'Veon Bell historically and Antonio Brown, if you're not about the team and you're not about doing what the Steelers are asking you to do and what Mike Tomlin's trying to lead you to do, they'll ship you out. And oftentimes those guys have massive down years. So there's something about the chemistry in that locker room of what Tomlin's getting them to do that really separates them across the league. And when they were actually talking about not bringing him back and not renewing his contract, I was blown away. If I was, any of these other teams that are kind of on the cusp or whatever, I would have been snapping at the bite there. I would have been calling Pittsburgh Steelers. I would have been calling Tomlin, figuring out how we can get him out, because without him, that organization goes massively downhill. But what they do there successfully is they let him have control of the team. There's no Jerry Jones ownership that's, trying to do the Pinocchio middling with the puppets. They let him do what he's got to do because he's a football mind and he's got a proven track record. Now, going back to the Dolphins, like you said, I'm a big in the trenches guy. I think you got to build from the line out on both sides of the ball. I have massive concerns on
the weakest areas of this team, you could argue, are O-line and D-line entering the season. No doubt.
If I was Tua Tagovailoa, your star player, your pedestal, I would be pissed at what they did this offseason based off of the injury reports that he's had just for himself. How many? I can't remember how many games exactly he missed last year, but it's well documented. And they did nothing to secure up that O-line. The one thing on Darren Waller is, 5 years ago, he was a stud, but he was never a great blocking tight end. And that could be the only reason to bring in a guy and talk about a retirement to help buy some time on the edges of those O-lines. Because you said it yourself, in preseason football, teams aren't really blitzing. And if they are blitzing, they're not using their crazy blitzes that they're trying to use week 1, week 5, week 7 down the road. They don't want to show that, right? So he's getting very standard stuff, and that O-line already looks like they're fully managed right now. They need to have, I think McDaniel's a great coach, but you can't scheme up at a certain point, right? I think that structurally, from a foundational standpoint, they have some massive holes. And, they got some good receivers. Honestly, call this a hot take, I would have sent out Tyreek Hill this year, tried to get something in return. You know what? He's getting a little older. He's still fast. He won't be fast forever. But they have so many holes around the middle of that line. And even just on the edges, they got some tight end question marks there, obviously.
I get your point, though. Like Tyreek Hill's value is only going to diminish from here.
Totally. And honestly, ask around the room how many people think that the Miami Dolphins are going to win a Super Bowl this year. And from my standpoint, if you're not winning the Super Bowl, what are you doing? So you got to build yourself up for success. They got some assets they could get rid of that could help set themselves up for the future. But again, if Tua goes down, they go from a potential playoff team, a potential wild card team, to all of a sudden a team that's in the lottery pick. So I don't have any faith in Wilson. I think that he went to a dumpster fire in the Jets, and that, obviously you can't fault him for that. We've seen that with a number of quarterbacks over the past 20 years. It's kind of like seeing a ghost over there in the Jets in the quarterback locker room. You never know really what's going on, and you kind of just feel bad for the guys. Obviously, Donald proved that when he went to Minnesota a couple years ago. I think that they've got some organizational issues there and some coaching decisions that have been question marks at best. So again, though, Wilson unproven, Tua injury prone. What happens if one of those guys goes down? And you're leveraging now your whole team on a unproven backup quarterback in Zach Wilson, who historically hasn't had teammates having his back and saying he's a great guy. I want to go to the trenches for him. I want to go to war for Zach Wilson. I've never seen it, never heard it. Not saying it doesn't happen, but we'll see. So I got a lot of doubts in that team. I think the running game is solid. But, again, if Tua goes down, they start handing the ball 40 times a game. That O-line isn't capable of opening up holes. And, Waller was never a blocking tight end. He was a receiving guy. So too many question marks for me. I think a good situation. They can beat out 500, but I'm not high on the Dolphins by any means.
That makes two of us. And just to wrap up on Miami, let's give you a little pot. We've had a lot of negative here. We're negative Nancy's here when it comes to the Dolphins for the most part these last few minutes. But I'll give you something positive. They actually could have a solid pass rush if Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are able to stay on the field. Those are two players that can get after the quarterback. But again, are you going to get them healthy? And Chop Robinson came on strong. He had 6 sacks, and he was just a rookie last year. You would think he's going to be a little bit better. So they have the ability, I think, from an edge rush standpoint, to be pretty solid. The linebacking core with Brooks and Dotson's not bad either for them. But the big questions are going to be the O-line and the D-line. Now, the schedule, it actually isn't the worst schedule in the world, but it starts off very tough. Ravens, Bills, Washington Commanders off the hop. I mean, you could be looking at 0-3. To start the season right there.
Think of what that does, though, for you mentally, though. If you go down 0-3 games off the top of the year, whether you're predicted to be a playoff team or not, that is a huge ego check in the mirror, and it is tough to come to work and put in the time on week 4, especially when you start having guys go down, guys get banged up. Maybe guys aren't getting the ball the way they thought they would. There's a lot of questions that get answered, and if you go down 0-3, there's a real gut check as to, hey, can we get ourselves out of this or not?
Oh, I have never. I got that wrong. That's those 3 teams: Ravens, Bills, and Commanders are week 9, 10, and 11. Not the first 3 games of this. It's still a tough stretch going into their bye week there in late October and early November. Actually, the first 3 games are kind of Colts. It could be. We're going to get to the Patriots next. I think they're going to be better this year, and then of course the Bills in week 3. So, like I said, for Miami, I bet under 8.5. I bet under 8.5 wins for the Miami Dolphins.
Week 1 is a must win. They have to beat the Colts. They have to.
Yeah, especially that's going to be a big one for them to set the tone for their season, and probably for that win total as well, no doubt. But not loving what I'm seeing at the moment here for the Miami Dolphins entering the season. I am liking the arrow pointing up a bit on this team, even though they were 4-13 and coming off a disaster season, the New England Patriots. Let's start with the coaching change. Mike Vrabel's a good hire. And you don't think he's a good hire? You don't think Tennessee misses him? After 1 year of Callahan Auto Parts there last year for the Tennessee Titans. Vrabel was taking them to division titles, number 1 seeds, playoffs, multiple years when he coached there. There are big-time concerns, in my opinion, for Tennessee without him. And it's for me, for New England, getting him as an upgrade. Gerard Mayo just looked a little overwhelmed, a little in over his head last year, didn't know how to manage the locker room, so to speak, if you will. Really good player in his day, but I think maybe just not quite ready yet. He may get another job down the road, but it felt like Gerard Mayo last year just wasn't fully ready and comfortable as far as being the head coach of that team, struggled with it. But at the same point in time, Mike Vrabel's been around the block. He's a Patriot as a player. It's just a really good hire, in my opinion, bringing him in here to be the head coach for this team. And now it is officially the keys have been handed to Drake May. Drake May had to bide his time. He had to wait several weeks last year with Jacoby Brissett starting the year as the quarterback. But when he got in there, he showed little flashes and glimpses of what he can bring long-term for the New England Patriots. We saw talent. Yes, he made mistakes, but we saw, a good arm. We saw the ability to move around in the pocket, ad-lib, throw on the run, all those things, and I think the New England Patriots have really worked hard, to build around Drake May here this year. Of course, the number 4 pick in the draft, Will Campbell, big pickup from LSU to shore up this and help this offensive line. Absolutely outstanding as far as that's concerned. No question. They've got comparisons to Trent Williams already for this guy, Will Campbell. So, and we know how good Trent Williams, a great quarter. He's going to the Hall of Fame, Trent Williams, when his career's over. That's how great an offensive lineman they think Will Campbell can be here for the New England Patriots. Like I said, the offensive line was a huge problem last year, maybe the biggest liability on this Patriots team. There's just a horrible unit last year. They had nothing on the right tackle spot. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out on the interior. They've made a nice addition here too. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. With Bradbury. I think when you look at this O-line, it should be in a better shape. Has to be, because it can't be much worse, obviously, than what we saw last year. And the receiving core was very thin. Demario Douglas was really the only solid above-average receiver they had last year. And credit to him. He's a good player, but you certainly needed a lot more as far as offensive options at receiver for them. And they go out, of course, they get Stephon Diggs. Say what you will about, the demeanor at times and the body language and attitude and all that stuff. He's still got the talent. It'll be interesting to see how he helps them. Kyle Williams, Keyshawn Booty. Mac Hollins is a nice veteran add as well for the Patriots. He's had had a good year in Buffalo there last year. You've still got Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper as far as tight ends are concerned. And, of course, at the running back spot, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson could end up being out of Ohio State, of course, could end up being a nice little running back tandem for them here this season for that Patriots offense. It was really the defense that held them in a lot of games last year. The offense was abysmal, bottom feeder offense in all the major statistical categories, no question. The defense was very solid last year, kept them in games until the second half of the year when the injuries really started to mount for the New England defense. That is when we saw the drop-off occur. So it'll be interesting to see how they play on that side or how they perform on that side of the football this year. Harold Landry was brought in to give them more of a pass rush, bringing him in. He's a huge upgrade. He knows Mike Vrabel from his time with the Titans, too, because Harold Landry was there in Tennessee when Vrabel coached the Titans. So it'll be a nice seamless transition in that regard for him as well. Again, pressure and getting a pass rush is going to have to improve. They were a bottom 5 team, New England, last year as far as pressure rate is concerned. So Harold Landry is definitely someone that should help that for the New England Patriots. They like Keon White, that they think he's going to get better as well as far as being able to get to the quarterback. Carlton Davis, brought in, which we'll see how he's able to help certainly that defense as well this season. Christian Gonzalez, don't forget, he's returning from last year. The ability he was able to show in that secondary for the New England Patriots, no question about that. Like I said, Kyle Duggar didn't have a great year. Jabril Peppers had a season marred by injuries, but don't forget he was good before last year when he had that injury-riddled season. So he could have a bounce-back year if he stays healthy. Robert Spillane was a nice veteran addition, in my opinion, as well for the Patriots at linebacker. So that was good to see that. Christian Ellis they like quite a bit. So I think that defense, it has the potential to be pretty good. Secondary, I like. I think the linebacking course on, they certainly shored up the pass rush with Landry. So I think that defense has the potential to be very good. And the schedule is as easy as it gets in the NFL. It's one of the easiest schedules on paper in the NFL, including games against the Raiders, the Dolphins, the sad sack NFC South, Panthers, Saints. They got the Browns on their schedule, Titans on their schedule. I mean, it is a very friendly schedule for the New England Patriots. I think they take a big leap. I think they go over their win total this year. I know it's year one, but sometimes you need time for the head coach to make the improvements. But I think year one, you will see this New England Patriots team make a big improvement. I know you're asking this team to go from 4-13 last year and make a 5-win leap, or actually 4-win leap, because I actually have over 7.5 wins on the New England Patriots. So they've got to be 4 wins better than they were last year to go over 7.5 wins. They have to be 8-9 or better. I think they can be. I think it's a huge coaching upgrade to Vrabel. The offense should be better. They've shored up the O-line at least a little bit. It won't be a bottom-tier O-line like it was last year. A full season of Drake May should help. I like what the defensive pieces are for this team. And the schedule is very manageable, very easy. Not just manageable, it's easy compared to what some of the other schedules are for teams in this division and other teams outside the division. So I like New England over 7.5 wins. And I did sprinkle on them to be that team that this is a tiny bet. Plus 604, New England to win the AFC East. If one team is going to upend Buffalo, I think it's this team. So plus 604, New England to win the AFC East, just a small bet. And then in the awards market, and that's the great thing, Liam, you can bet Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, MVP, Coach of the Year. I bet Mike Vrabel to win Coach of the Year, plus 800. Because you always have to look. The criteria is you look for the coach that's going to make his team have a huge, improvement from one year to the next. You don't want to be betting McDermott or Reed or the teams that are the best. They've been great for years. They're not going to win Coach of the Year. They were always looking for the coaches that take their team from being a bottom feeder one year to much improved the next year. Those are the coaches that usually win Coach of the Year. And I think Mike Vrabel at 8-1 for New England is worth a look. Liam, what do you think here for those New England Patriots?
You know what? I think you nailed it there with Mike Vrabel. I think he would be my pick for Coach of the Year as well. I think they're going to have a massive jump just from consistency behind the play calling sheet. I think he's, a coach that's been proven to win, and he did it with Ryan Tannehill. No knocks against Ryan Tannehill, but they were a playoff team, and he didn't have a lot of talent around them. So going from that history, he's got a proven track record of, getting the most out of his players, teach them how to play winning football. I think he's going to carry that same mindset way back to his playing days as he did with the Patriots, right? I think he's the perfect fit for that team. I think Robert Kraft is one of the best owners in football, not just from a success standpoint of winning all those Super Bowls, but from knowing his role and just supporting his management staff. He knows he's not the football expert. He lets his coaches, he lets his management team make the choice that they need to be successful. Obviously, Gerard Mayo didn't work out. I think that was a Bill Belichick hire, that it was kind of a wish granted as he was walking out the door out of respect. It didn't work out, but I think that Vrabel is going to be an immediate, at least a 4-win impact team. You said it, they have an easier schedule. They got to win some of those close games. I think this defense is solid, but they need to stay healthy. I'm not super sold on Drake May. Obviously, now that he's got the full year, he's going to be a starter week 1. That's going to be huge just for the team, just for being able to buy in, rally around, getting those extra reps that he wasn't getting the first 2 months of the season last year. That's massive in terms of what you can expect for him and in terms of the playbook opening up for him. So he's going to have more tools under his belt. Obviously, it's a new offense now that he's going to be learning with Vrabel, but it's probably going to be a lot better than the offense he was running under Mayo. So I think a lot of it rests on him. Again, kind of similar to what I was saying before. Don't ask him to do too much. I would really rely on that run game and just control the pace of the clock. I'm worried about Stephon Diggs. He's getting a little older. I don't know if he's the game changer that we are used to seeing out of him. And my big concern is if they go down a couple games early in the season, how is he going to handle maybe not getting the ball like he was expecting to as he was in Buffalo or, elsewhere? I don't know if he's the kind of guy that can handle, the blocking assignments and maybe not getting 5-8 throws a game targeted at him, right? He might only get a few, especially when you look at the other receivers on that team. He's the one that stands out. So he's going to be getting the defensive shaded coverage. He's going to be getting the pressure. He's going to be getting the press off the line. I don't know if Drake May is a guy that can put the ball in those tight spaces yet. I'm not saying he can't, but we're going to find out a lot more about him this year. So it really depends off, can they come out hot? Can they come out of the gates ready to play, ready to dial in, not making mistakes, not giving away games on blown calls or blown coverages or whatever? I think Vrabel's going to do the job he needs to do to get them mentally ready to win. It's just, can everyone fall in line and buy in immediately? And
there were times last year with Mayo as the head coach that looked like things were disorganized. People were running on the field last minute, and they didn't know what formations they were running. They had to call a timeout and burn a timeout at a bad time. And just there was a little bit of that dysfunction at times when you watch New England play under Mayo. That's probably going to decrease quite a bit, those kind of shenanigans under Mike Vrabel.
Totally. The one thing I do love is and he says all the right things, is Will Campbell. He is sounding like a guy that you can build a team around or build an offensive line around. Hopefully he plays the same way he was at LSU. He seems very honest with where he's at and what he needs to work on. But he's saying all the right things that you want to hear from a rookie offensive lineman or just a rookie in general entering the NFL. If I was Drake May, I would love that pick. Can they support and build around him? And again, I think just hammer the ball in the run, take some of that pressure off of Drake May. Don't make him make those deep balls downfield. Utilize play action. He's a mobile guy. Get him to roll out a little bit. Fake the handoff, just simple checkdowns. Don't drive the field. He's not that kind of guy, at least at this point in his career. If you just ask him to game manage, I think he's going to be capable of sneaking out a few wins that typically in the past couple of years, Patriot fans haven't been seeing.
Yeah, it's. I think they take a big step. I think they finish second in the AFC East. I think they're better than Miami, and I think they finish better than this next team that we'll talk about as well. The New York Jets. Although, if you ask me, because as obviously I think, even though I took the small shot on the Patriots to win the division, if you ask me, I still think Buffalo's winning the division. New England finishes second. I think this team could finish third, though, the New York Jets. Like, I honestly think Miami could actually bring up the rear and end up finishing last, especially if Tua doesn't finish the season healthy. And they've got to turn to Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers at quarterback. Quinn Ewers not going to be any sort of big-time NFL quarterback in my mind. He looked horrific, by the way. I know it's one preseason game, but he looked awful against Chicago in their first preseason game. So if Tua goes down, look out. But the New York Jets are interesting, right? This has been a black cloud over this franchise, really, since Joe Namath led them to that Super Bowl, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever it was. I mean, it has just been, and I've said this for years, you go to the New York Jets, you lose your ability to play at a high level. You leave the New York Jets, and your skills come back again. That's kind of been what it's been like for life with the New York Jets over the years. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' experiment comes to an end. He is no longer there. Devontae Adams out. And there's a lot of roster turnover here. Tyler Conklin, the tight end, gone. Solomon Thomas, defensive end, gone. Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, gone. Hassan Reddick, linebacker, gone. C.J. Mosley moved on in the offseason as with DJ Reed. I mean, there's definitely a lot of roster turnover here for the New York Jets. But when you've had disappointment, and yeah, Mosley was a retirement for the New York Jets. He retired in the offseason. And a lot of new faces, and it'll be interesting to see how it all blends together. The biggest of all, I guess the most impactful of all, is obviously the quarterback position, simply because without the quarterback playing at a functional level, it's difficult to win. And now they will trust the quarterback position to Justin Fields who comes over from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It'll be interesting to see how he fits this New York Jets offense. New head coach in Aaron Glenn. And I'll say this about Aaron Glenn. Early in his time with Detroit as defensive coordinator, I wasn't thrilled with what I was seeing. In fact, early when he took over the first 2 years, Detroit had a horrible defense. And people were calling for Aaron Glenn's head, saying, fire this guy. Our defense stinks, and it's not getting any better. That's what some Lions fans, and there are some Lion fans here, Southern Ontario, mostly Bills fans, but there's a decent amount of Lions fans, especially if you get close to Windsor, right across the Ontario-Michigan border there. A lot of Lions fans. When Aaron Glenn was the DC there in Detroit those first couple of seasons, they wanted him gone. That's how bad the defense was. Now, credit to him, the defense got better in the later years when they made those playoff pushes and got into the playoffs. And certainly we've seen them improve under Aaron Glenn's tutelage there, that Detroit Lions defense. So that quelled the naysayers a little bit. But there's still that question of, is he a good coordinator or can he be a good head coach? Not all coordinators are great head coaches, as we know. We've seen it play out that way a bunch of times. But again, they're going to see what they can get with Justin Fields. They get more mobility. That's the one thing. Aaron Rodgers has lost a lot of his mobility. There's no question about that. And he does have Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson still has the potential to be one of the better receivers in the NFL if he, gets the ball often and, and the O-line can protect so that he can get the ball more often. That's going to be the big question here. But Garrett Wilson, we'll see if he can get that chemistry established with Justin Fields. The problem is the rest of the receiving core. There's nothing to write home about. Alan, Lazard, is, I think, not great. And he benefited a lot from Rodgers. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the receiving core plays out, but it's not phenomenal. Josh Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, Malachi Corley, What are they going to get from these guys at receiver? It's not the best receiving core in the world, but again, it's not going to matter unless the O-line, starts to play a little bit better here for this New York Jets team. And when you look at what they've got in the offensive line, they should take a step. The 2025 NFL draft, they drafted Armand Membu, and I think he's certainly going to be able to help as far as bring some stability to this offensive line that was just under such duress for a good part of last year. They've got the left tackle now in his second year, Olu Fashanu. I think there's definitely some potential for him to improve now with another year under his belt. But he, in that left tackle spot. So I could see him playing better, and he did get better as the season went on. Elijah Vera Tucker is still here. Very talented guard, very, very good player. But again, an extensive, massive history of injuries constantly for Elijah Vera Tucker. Can we get 17 games out of him? Big questions there, no doubt. John Simpson, very solid. So when I look at it, thinking Membu's going to help, drafting him, thinking Fashanu can be better this year. I think the O-line, I've got it pointing up that the O-line should be better, and maybe that's going to make things better for Justin Fields as well. And again, also help the run game, which at times struggled last year. But if the O-line improves, they've shown in flashes how good these running backs can be, the duo of Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. In fact, last year, Liam, there were times Braylon Allen played a lot better than Breece Hall did even. So, Braylon Allen's someone to really watch out here for the Jets. And can Breece Hall, have a bit of a bounce back here? Because we were saying Breece Hall going into last year, big year for him, and it really didn't play out that way. And a lot of it was the offensive line being subpar at opening up those holes for the run game. So the fact that, you've also got, Fields who can be more mobile, and no doubt, I think the running backs are going to be a big part of the offense. The screen game, dumping it off, Fields being able to escape the pocket, and find the running backs. They're going to play an integral role, in my opinion, for this Jets offense. The defensive side of the football last year, I don't think we saw them falling off the cliff like they did. I think a lot of people thought, hey, the defense would still be pretty good, but they regressed hard. They were just not very good, and it's what ultimately helped cost Robert Saleh his job. And then the interim coach was out to lunch. He did not do a good job at all, as far as I'm concerned, taking over. There's no question about that. But like I said, just all kinds of issues. They had an in-season coach firing, and then the defense. You could probably say it even got worse after they fired Robert Saleh last year, the New York Jets. Like I said, this is the big question mark. Can they get back? Because we thought this was going to be an outstanding defense last year, and it's really hard to fathom how they just fell apart. And it was everybody. These were players that we all thought were going to be great players, like Sauce Gardner in the cornerback spot, who had a dreadful year, awful. We thought this guy's going to be one of the best corners in the NFL in his rookie year. And last year, he's just brutal at times, terrible, bad as it gets. I'm not kidding either. He was as bad as it gets. Jets fans, I heard them all year last year screaming about Sauce Gardner and how pathetic he was at times last year in that secondary. So, like I said, you got to hope that he bounces back in that secondary. Now, they also had injuries. There's no question about that as well. But DJ Reed's gone. You're going to need Gardner to improve. You're going to need Michael Carter to have a better season. He wasn't great in that secondary last year. You did sign Brandon Stevens. You used a third-round pick on a player to shore up the secondary, but there's still big question marks there. No doubt about that. Up front, when you look at this team, John Franklin Myers, was definitely missed last year, and you could see the D-line kind of got hurt by it. And of course, Quinnen Williams, who is a really good player, he was, a lot of more attention paid to him, and he kind of struggled. They've kind of revamped the D-line going into this year. Derek Nadi brought in Byron Cowart, Jay Tufeli. So we'll see if they can sort of help it out. It's going to be a work in progress, I think, for that group. No question about that. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see. Jermaine Johnson had some issues due to an Achilles injury last year early in the season. So him being back should also help. Will McDonald was good for them. He was the one player that got a pretty consistent pass rush for the Jets last year, double-digit sacks for the Jets on defense last year. So that should definitely help. But still some questions about the D-line interior. Cornerback secondary is so much variance, Liam. If you tell me Sauce Gardner has a rebound year, if you tell me that Michael Carter plays better than he did last year, then I'll say this could be an elite secondary. But you're talking about guys coming off down years, and a lot of the narrative is soured on. This is going to be up to Sauce Gardner to say, I'm better than that. In the offseason, to take it as a personal affront that how poorly his play went last year and say, I'm better than that. I know that, and do something about it. Work that extra hard in offseason to get ready to have a bounce back year for the New York Jets. We'll see if they're able. They also had issues in the kicking game last year. Greg Zuerlein struggled. And then they brought in Anders Carlson and Harrison Mevis, ended up finishing the season. They're going to be able to make their kicks because that was a big problem for the New York Jets last year at times as well, no doubt. As far as the schedule is concerned, a mixed bag. They play Baltimore, Denver, Pittsburgh. Those are going to be tough games. Obviously, the Bills twice being in the AFC East. Those will all be tough games, but they have their fair share of winnable games too. Cleveland, New Orleans not going to be very good. New Orleans, and we'll get to this in the NFC South, New Orleans might be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I'm already starting to think that about the New Orleans Saints. But they get Cleveland, they get New Orleans, Carolina. I think should be better, but still, they're work in progress. And Dallas even could be a winnable game for the Jets, as there's a lot of issues I have still about the Dallas Cowboys right now. So, and Aaron Glenn it's training camp. But he's brought a little energy to the Jets. I'm seeing a little more like Robert Saleh was stoic to the point of it. He almost looked like, did this guy even give two shits? Because he didn't show any emotion. He was just chewing on the gum, that stoic stare, Saleh, the whole time. The one thing Aaron Glenn, as head coach, is going to give this Jets team, Liam, is a little intensity, a little passion, a little fire and brimstone. He's going to be able to give you a good rah-rah speech and fire up the boys, so to speak. And I don't think Robert Saleh, that was his thing at all, to do that, to be that kind of character and personality. So maybe that galvanizes the New York Jets a little bit. Their win total right now, if you look at it, the New York Jets, it's in that 5.5 range minus. Like I lean over before under for the New York Jets at 5.5. To ask them, if for them to cash the win total, they have to go 6-11. I think it's possible. With their schedule. Now, a lot of it is the defense has to start playing to the level of talent we thought they had going into last year. D-line's they got to have better health on defense. That's paramount because they were riddled with injuries on defense last year. And Sauce Gardner, who we thought was going to be a Pro Bowl cornerback for life in this league in his first year, he's got to find his way again because that was unreal, the drop-off last year from him. If those things happen, if Justin Fields plays good, doesn't have to play great, but just plays good, protects the football, they run the ball better with Hall and Allen, a little bit more energy and a bump from the coach and the coaching change, I could see them getting to that 6-win. We're not asking them to be a 500 team. We're not asking them to be a double-digit win team. We're not asking them to make the playoffs. We're asking the New York Jets to be even just functional a little bit. And if they are, I think they can go over 5.5 wins and get to 6-11. What do you think here, Liam, for our final team on this AFC East preview, the New York Football Jets?
You know what? I think 6 wins is an unreal year for them. I'm a bit more pessimistic on the Jets. Why? Because they're the New York Jets. I don't know if you guys remember, but this is the team whose rumored son of the owner was making Madden trades around the team last year. They were turning down and accepting trades based off of what players' Madden ratings were, which is, if that even has 5% truth to it, that is absolutely ridiculous. I think that this team, more than any other team from an organizational standpoint, is screwed. And I think that when you look at players, like you said, when they leave the Jets and all of a sudden you go, hey, that guy's not trash. It's almost like when evaluating quarterbacks to leave the Jets, you almost have to imagine they were out of the league for a year or two. Because, you look at guys like Donald, I think Rodgers is going to have a bounce back year. I don't think he was as old or as beat down or as out of it as he looked last year with the Jets. I think they just have organizational issues there going from top down, and that there's not the right guys there putting people in a position to be successful. And I think when you're a player and you're investing this much time into your craft and you look around and you say, hey, my coach, my teammates aren't putting me in a position to be successful, that really beats you down over the course of a 17-week season, especially when you're asking them to be an all-star or a leader or whatever else, other roles you're trying to get them filled within the organization. I don't think that the Jets have those tools in place. I think their owner is way too hands in to let these guys just run with it. And I think until, sadly, they have a change in ownership, I don't see.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that think the Jets won't do jack shit until Woody Johnson's out of there. Yep.
There you go. There you go. Right. And I almost compare them to the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Cincinnati Bengals didn't have Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow didn't say, hey, we're drafting Jamar Chase, they'd be in the exact same boat. The reality is you need to have top-down success. It doesn't matter what players you have dressing on game day. It doesn't matter who's dressing up for the Jets at quarterback this week if they don't have the structure in place to allow them to succeed. And I just don't think they have that. I honestly feel bad for Justin Fields coming from a situation in a quarterback room in Chicago, which was clearly not built for his success or development in any way. And they were always 1 foot in, 1 foot out, looking for Caleb Williams, who's in the exact same position as Justin Fields was there, out the resources, without the team around him, and without coaching leadership that can really help him develop and flourish in this league. You see it in their attitude as they're walking around the field. I hope Justin Fields bounces back. I think he got the short end of the stick when he was in Chicago. I don't think he had the support he needed or the people invested in his development that he needed to be successful. I think he has the tools to be a successful quarterback in this league, especially when you look around some of the other starters in the league on those bottom 16 teams. I think he could be a stud, but the reality is if you're wasting your initial years in the league behind coaches and management teams that aren't giving you the tools to develop, let alone win games, then what's going on here? So the sad thing is, until the Jets figure out some organizational issues, I don't think it matters who's behind center for these guys. I think that Justin Fields is going to have to go out there, scramble his ass off, and make some plays that people are going, how the hell did he do that, for them to even be in the ballpark of having a successful year. Do I think they can win 6 games? Yeah, of course. Do I think that they can win 7, 8, 9? Hell no, especially when you look at who's running the team. So until they figure out some of those deeper questions organizationally, I think that the Jets are always going to be a bottom feeder. As a player, it would not be a team I'm willing to sign for in free agency unless they're the only team that's bidding on my services. So I think that guys are looking at it as a black hole around the league. I don't think you're getting the resources you need to be successful or win games. So from a player who's motivated to win and buy into a culture, what culture are you selling there in New York? You're not selling a winning culture that guys are saying, hey, these coaches are going to put me in a position to be successful. When they're pitching me in the free agency, they're telling me the truth. I know that they're going to have coaches there that are designing plays to get me the ball in space. I know they got a quarterback there that can get me the ball out on time, 1, 2, 3 step throw. I don't think any of those things are happening. I think, they might have tools around the field, but the reality is, I'm not shocked that guys have down years. I think, I think Sauce Gardner's a great DB. I think that he's kind of just in a tough spot there where he's being asked to do too much. The expectations were sky high after that rookie year. And he's just being over leveraged because the safety nets around him aren't in place. Like who's his backup if he gets beat off the line? Like who's in that safety there that's a threat to actually help out protect while watching down that half side? They're not there. And the reality is, I don't think it even matters if they were there, because from a coaching, management, organizational standpoint, they're not putting guys in positions to succeed. And it's sad to see. Compare that in contrast to what we're seeing in Pittsburgh, where they have a subpar offense or subpar positional groups that are over competing for what we actually expect from them. And you go, hey, they've got an organizational standpoint that's set up here behind Mike Tomlin that is putting guys in positions to be successful, to make plays and do what we're paying them to do. And the New York Jets are just not that team. So from a standpoint, do I think 6 games? I think that's an outstanding year for them. I think Justin Fields can do it, but I'm not holding my breath to say, 3 years down the line that this is a team that I'm really banking on, because just history proof is in the pudding. This organization is not one that buys in to the success of the players and the development of the team. So, call me pessimistic, but I think the Jets are crashing and burning again.
There you go. Well, they can crash and burn and still be 6-11. That's what. Let's hope for that.
True.
Get over 5.5. Exactly. All I'm asking them, William, to do is be 1 win better than last year, which I think they can do. They were 5-12 last year, and it was a shit show season, start to finish. And you had an inept, not bad, inept interim coach. He didn't know what the fuck he was doing. That guy. I think
letting Salah go was a huge mistake. I think that him and Rodgers had some kind of rift going on, but they knew Rodgers was out the door from week 5. So I think they should have kept him in place, built a defense around him, and figured out some foundational longevity there and built something that is actually built to last and succeed. Because the reality is, it's a turnstile
Jeff Ulbrich.
right now.
There we go. I was blanking on the name. Jeff Ulbrich. Yeah. It was just, yeah, it was, look, he's defensive coordinator, and he's back in Atlanta now as a DC, which is what he did with the Jets before he was the interim coach there after Saleh got fired. So maybe he'll have more success in Atlanta now, and more in a role that he's comfortable in as DC with them. But certainly, as far as coaching, head coach, he was in over his head. You could clearly see
100%.
it. No
100%.
question about that. And that'll be better with Aaron Glenn, you would think. They have a new GM, too, as well. You would think that helps for the New York Jets as well, because Joe Douglas is finally out of there as the former head GM of the New York Jets. So new GM, new head coach. I think, it's a starting point to get this franchise off the mat. But again, you got to see it before you believe it, right? There's a little bit of an element like that when it comes to the New York Jets this season, no doubt. There you have it. That's your AFC East division season preview. Great job. Liam Howe was great. He's like the both of us, man. We are setting records on this show for words per minute or words per show. Like the two of us just rambling on. We're a bunch of rambling fools here on these four teams. But we're packing it with info and opinions and takes. And that's what we're here to do on the AFC East Division Preview Show here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Time to wrap up the show with best bets, an AFC East Division best bet. Liam, it can be anything you want. Any bet that you think that makes the most sense to you, whether it's to win the division, over under win total, a season-long player prop, or a player award, or a bet of some kind, anything from the AFC East, what would you make as far as a best bet?
Well, I think the easiest bet to make would be betting on the Buffalo Bills to win the season here, or win the division. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think that Josh Allen is up for a big MVP year. Whenever he takes that step forward, I think he will take it at some point in his career. Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it the year
after? Minus 280. Do you want to go with that as best bet as a big price, or do you want to go with that win total that you mentioned, which is a little bit better price? It's up to you.
Know what? I'm gonna go a little different route. I'm gonna go Buffalo Bills 14 wins this year.
Oh wow! There you go. That means we should be betting alternate team alternate, and at FanDuel you can bet alternate season win totals. You don't just have to bet the standard posted win total. They'll give you 12.5. They'll give you 13.5. They'll give you even 14.5, 15.5 for win totals for all these teams.
I'm bullish on the Bills here. I think that their division, they're so much stronger, and if they could just do what they're expected to do, they're going to be set up for success. And there's only so many times you can lose to the Chiefs, right? So I'm big on the Bills. I think 14 is my hot take. I think that's a great year for them, obviously. I think it's just whenever Josh Allen's ready to take that next step.
All right, there you have it. That means 14-3 or better, says Liam Howe for the Buffalo Bills. So we'll lock in over 13.5 wins, plus 210 is the price with that. Hell of a price. Buffalo Bills over 13.5 wins, plus 210 for Liam Howe with his best bet. My AFC East best bet, we're going to take those New England Patriots to go over 7.5 wins. This is my favorite win total in the AFC East division. You have to lay a price about minus 150 or so, but I think they're 8-9 or better. Mike Vrabel will be a breath of fresh air. He brings that Patriots culture back to New England. They've improved along in the trenches, especially along the offensive line. There's no doubt on paper it should be a better offensive line. The defense should be very good as long as they stay healthy. They've got a solid pass rush. Harold Landry comes in from Tennessee. The secondary should be solid. And I think Drake May, first full year as a starting quarterback, and Josh McDaniels, the OC there in New England, they have harmony, and we see that offense take a big step forward. A little few more weapons at receiver. Kyle Williams, they like him. It'll be interesting to see the guy they drafted out of Washington State. And no doubt Steph Diggs, if he stays healthy, he still can be a pretty good receiver. Mac Hollins, they've just got a better receiving core, better O-line. Defense should be good. And the schedule is as easy as it gets this year, and I think it helps New England get over 7.5 wins. New England Patriots over 7.5 wins for my AFC East best bet. Great stuff, Liam. Anything to say before we wrap it up?
No, football season's back. Let's get after those bet lines, and thanks for having me on again, Ian. Appreciate it.
And we'll get Liam on for another division preview as well in the next few weeks. For Liam Howe, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great, I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been your AFC East Division Season Preview edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.